My family doesn't like listening to me talk for long periods of time because I have the gift of gab. But if we're like having a fun dinner and then someone's like keeps getting up, guys, no more getting up. And then they keep doing it. Guys, last one. And they do it again. Then I'll just be like, family meeting. Now I'm going to talk. Here's the situation. And my wife, it's the hardest for her because she has to feel the punishment too of listening.
She's like, can I get up? I have to get up.
Okay, so let's record the intro now.
So what is Milkless? Because I think we start with the name.
Two dads, we love our kids, but then we also need them to know that we're like pretty cool and it's not like a wimpy podcast. So, hey, hey, Milkless.
Hey, welcome. Hey,
Milkless. Call the audience Milkless. What's up, Milkless? Matt and Max coming at you.
What if that's it? That's our first take.
All right, Matt, we are back live via satellite. It is Thursday. We got a great episode for people today. Listen, we're going to take a little bit of a season break. We'll be back in January. So enjoy this episode. It's going to be a fun one. But also, during the holiday break, if you have a drive, go ahead and listen back through the catalog. Maybe you haven't listened to all of them already. You know, there's some favorites in there. And then give us a DM on Instagram. Let us know what your favorites are. But Matt and I wanted to do a quick thing where we reflected on, some of the things that we've learned from Milkless, some of the things that maybe changed how we parent. So, Matt, how do you want to get into this? Do you want to go first? Do you want to tell me what you've learned?
Sure. Here's the first one that came to my mind. When we started doing this podcast, the point of it, a big part of the point of it was that you and I wanted to try to become better dads by talking about this stuff together. Mm-hmm. I think there's a piece of that, of becoming a better dad, that is about just becoming a better human, a more mature person, the kind of like dealing with the stuff about your own childhood that was imperfect, all those things. But I think one thing that I have learned is that the biggest change I can make to be a better dad that can happen quickly, that isn't like years of therapy or whatever, is learning
to take ketamine.
Yeah, right. Is to take ketamine and live in a constant horse tranquilizer induced stupor.
Go in the K-hole.
Other than that, the quickest path I found is like, what tools can I learn so that in the moment, in that heightened moment, I am able to not just take my kids' big emotions and make them mine. Mm-hmm. That was something that Dr. Bryson talked about a lot, is like how contagious emotions are.
Yeah.
And
totally.
That like closed this framing of something that I think we've talked about in a million different ways, that like in that moment when your kid is losing their shit and you feel the gorilla coming out of yourself, mm-hmm. There are some simple tools that involve like certain ways of breathing, making sure to look at your child's face and make eye contact with them, being better at tapping out.
Viewing the whole thing in third person.
Third personing. Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, you've articulated it really well, because when you become the gorilla, you don't even recognize that you're the gorilla anymore. It's over. So what are those? Another one that Dr. Bryson articulated well is like, what is my on-ramp to being a crazy person? She's like, mine is biting sarcasm. Mm-hmm. When I hear myself using biting sarcasm, I'm on the way to screaming. Yeah. So that has been a big takeaway from me, is just like, how do you short circuit your way when you're on your way up through the roof? Because there's actually, I don't really believe in hacks, but that's like the closest thing to hacks I can think of to being a better parent.
Yeah. And we actually talked about it in episode 2 about like off-gassing. And we were like, yeah, man, like, can you see it coming? And trying to, discover that. I think another thing that I've said over the podcast that you noticed was like, it just feels inevitable. And that's been a transformation for me. Just, I always kind of felt like, well, this is inevitable.
Yeah.
Kids are being shitty. So,
Yeah.
And that's what's been interesting about Milkless. And I hope for the listeners as well, that like, just by like talking about this sort of stuff, it becomes less like, oh, you can see it from a bird's eye view. You can see it like, oh, it's not inevitable. Like my kid throwing their shoes at me when I'm trying to get them on as we get out the door. That was like an automatic yell at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of times I was, kind of on the kids a lot, because we have 3 kids. You have 2 or 3 young kids. If you're not doing this sort of work, and by work, I just mean like talking about it or like thinking about it outside of the game,
Yeah.
Because when you're in your mudroom putting on the shoes and you're late, that's the game.
Yeah.
And this is practice right now.
Yeah.
So
right now we're in practice. Yeah.
So if you've never do practice, then it's just inevitable that like, oh, it's like I was just nagging the kids constantly. And it was almost like there was, I always did the check-in with my partner. My wife and I would kind of chat about how things are going. What can we do better? But that was when it was like really bad. Like we have a really bad sleep situation. We need to talk about this. Like now it's become more nuanced where it's like, well, we got to talk about how I'm just like nagging the kids constantly. What can I do differently to not be like, dude? Because I remember before the podcast, before we started talking about it, there'd be like weeks where I was just kind of like, kids are just fucking annoying me.
Yeah.
And then it's like, if you don't have that introspection to look back, you have to recognize it before you can make any sort of changes.
Yeah, there's that. I don't like saying it because it rhymes, and saying things that rhyme so it always feels cheesy to me. But there's that phrase, name it to tame it. And I hate the way that shit sounds to me, the way love languages sounds to you. Like just saying it makes me feel like I want to kick my own ass.
Yeah.
But the science behind that is that when you articulate an emotion or an experience you are having, you move that into a part of your brain that is more rational and more able to control it. So when you talk about these things that are happening, suddenly these processes become not just like reactive, like the reactive behavior of your unconscious. They become something that's in conversation with your rational brain that you can still make, that you make choices.
Totally.
So name it to tame it, guys. Get out there and name it to tame it.
Please stop. Please stop. This will be my last podcast episode.
This is the end of season 3 and also the whole endeavor.
Our friendship. So, all right.
All right. Maybe this will be a hot takes. Maybe we'll beep these.
Sounds great. Something for me, I think a lot of them are going to come down to having some self-reflection. And I think through hopefully listening to the podcast, but then also us talking about it, it just helps, because when you name it, you tame it. But basically being aware of the sleep procrastination issue that we both have, where we were both staying up late, giving that a name and then trying to tame, like it was just,
you want to set an aim. Once you find a name and you're trying to tame, you want to set an aim, and then you can almost make it a game
with no blame. We're freestyle rappers at this point. But,
I hate us.
No. But guys, just give us 1-star reviews on all platforms.
Please.
Take it down.
It's time.
Insufferable. This is probably the worst podcast that exists. So just put us out.
Sorry, you were making a real point. Go ahead.
All right. Learning about the sleep procrastination was like, okay, wow, I'm actually like perpetually tired because I had developed this internal story about myself that, I don't need a lot of sleep. Now, I can get by with like 6.5, 7. And that's the key word, get by, and be kind of a dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I realized, it was like, it's a joke with me and my wife that I've probably said many times on the program, that like sometimes things that she's been nagging me about, whenever I do them, I pretend they're my idea. Like, hey, babe, I just got like 9 hours of sleep the last 4 nights. Like, I feel really great. Like, you should try this. She's like, you fucking idiot. But it's true though, like getting more sleep then made me have more patience for the kids. Then it was like a positive feedback loop. It's similar with the This Is 40 episode where you asked me, episode 45, where you said like, oh, I was trying to lose weight. And you're like, why don't you not compulsively weigh yourself every day and then like drop 10 pounds in 10 days? And I've weighed myself probably 4 times since that, like a year ago. And I'm like, not super thin. I'm not unhealthily thin, but I'm on my way to, I'm eating healthy. Like it's that whole sort of thing. Also just like having patience with the kids. Not everything needs to be so, growth mindset. We don't need to be improving all the time. Like it all was kind of like tied together with the sleep procrastination, weirdly.
Interesting.
Like, why were we doing that? It's because we were trying to like push forward this agenda of our life. I've been giving myself to my kids too much. I need more me time. So I have to stay up late, which then kind of fucks you and shoots you in the foot. And that's not being an adult. That's not growing. So a big part of that was the sleep thing. I'm getting way more sleep now, having more self-reflection. I'm it's easier to practice.
Yeah. That was something I remember a long time ago we talked about this. It's what I want is not just the ability to grit my teeth and discipline my way around my shitty impulses. I want to find a way to not have those impulses be quite so strong.
Yeah.
The way you talk about all those things being tied together is really cool. It is frustrating to me. And I think probably a lot of people are like this, and maybe particularly men, or maybe that's not a fair generalization, but we don't want to be so beholden to our bodies. I'll hear all the time people will be like, I don't know why I'm feeling so upset today. And it's how much sleep did you get last night? 4 hours. There doesn't have to be a single other explanation. That's right. That it can explain all of it. So yeah, just that humility of nah, I need this. I need to do this for myself. That's good to learn. This is, Maxie, something that you have kind of moderated me on. I think that I think I felt more dissimilarly from you when we started this podcast than I do now. You have mentioned in various ways throughout the podcast that and you'll say it in funny ways, I kind of try to incept my kids with the worldview that I think will benefit them in their life. I'm whispering in their ear at night, I one specific example is it's amazing to have a brother. Yeah. It's amazing to have a sibling. And that was an episode where I was kind of arguing yeah, but it's hard too. And you got to acknowledge that. I think that I had this worry of trying to imprint myself onto my kids that made me ignore the obvious truth that we are also our children's teacher and we will imprint on them. And we do help them make sense and meaning of the world. And that is not a role to shy away from, but a role to think about really hard, to make sure that you're balancing that with letting them have their own feelings and their own emotions about things. But that is actually part of our role, to help frame the experiences that they have in a way that we feel will benefit them. I still think that's complicated, but I think I was too far on one side of it, and you've pulled me towards the middle.
I'm glad. And in our prep for this episode, you said, Dr. Tina Payne Bryson said, we are our children's meaning maker. So really, I feel like my wife when I've been telling you something. And then when Dr. Tina Payne Bryson says it, then it's true all of a sudden. And now you believe me.
Yeah, so.
Okay. All right. But I'm glad you're on team Inception. No, I was just trying to be funny. I thank you. And honestly, I strongly believe this because an analogy that I think about a lot with our kids, and it can be on micro or macro scales, is I love the analogy of a siphon. When you suck a tube and you suck that tube until the water gets going, you fucking suck it good.
Oh, God damn.
And then sometimes you get a mouthful of gasoline or a mouthful of fish tank water, whatever. But then it's going by itself. So that's the tough part, because a lot of parents maybe are the inception people, but then they turn into helicopters and they turn into overbearing parents that don't allow their children to thrive and flourish. But I believe that if you can be a siphon parent, that you get it started. Get their love for fucking pad thai started when they're 6 months old. Feed them the pad thai. Pad thai so good. It's so amazing. Oh, your siblings are great, man.
Yeah.
Then they will, I don't say that every day, because then it becomes contrived. But we have such a lifetime of exploring cool things. We have 50% of the same DNA as these fuckers. The chances are your kids might like some of the things you like.
Yeah.
And maybe it took you your whole life to figure it out. It's oh man, do you know about space or dinosaurs? Do you know about the deep ocean? The deep ocean is cool. Did you know that dolphins and whales can communicate with each other from really far away? These are things that I probably didn't learn until I was in 8th grade. But I found them so cool. And you do that all the time with science. So you just take it one level further with, how they're supposed to feel.
Well, there's an interesting, super tangible example of this. And that I think is also an example of both the error of both extremes and also kind of this midpoint that you're trying to hit. And people talk about this a lot. When your kid falls and hurts themselves, and Dr. Bryson did talk about this before she taught me this idea that you'd never brought up before. But there's the version of it where you are so empathizing with your kids. You know, say they're not hurt, they're just scared, but you're so empathizing with that feeling that you feed a thing that is, and you make it harder than it ought to be. Your kid is suddenly sobbing in tears because they see your level of concern. I do think on the other end of this, there is the air of like, you're all right. Rub some dirt on it, walk it off when they're really hurt. And in the middle of that, I think, is communicating calm in either event. You communicate calm to them. And that is the idea that you can incept them with, is that like we try to react calmly to situations. So I don't think it's as simple as like we tell our kids how to feel. Of course it isn't. But all those examples you used about nature, it's like that's A, about discovering science or space or whales or trees or whatever. But B, it's like I have a fundamental belief that the more we feel like we exist within and is connected to the natural world, the more fulfilled and happy our lives are and the less we're scared of dying. So those are things that like, yeah, I'm totally intentionally trying to incept the shit out of my kids, or at least start the siphon.
Right. Because here's the thing. It's like to get the siphon going we make family skits. We make movies. We don't really post them because we don't like posting our kids on social media, but like I have these home skit videos, like a high school skit.
I've seen them all.
And at first, yeah, they didn't want to do them, you know, because I'm like, hey, do you want to do a movie? They're like, how long is it going to take? I'm like, like 4 hours. And they're like, eh. They said no. So I can either force them to do it, which I'm not going to do, or I'm going to try to like incept them and make them, because they can't see the finish line yet.
Yeah.
Now they want to do them all the time. So that first time I needed to get the siphon going by being like, guys, can you imagine? What if there was a video that you could watch when you were 20 years old and you look back and it was a movie we made and it was a little movie and we can show it to the grandparents. They're going to want to see it and this and that and this. And you like tell the story of why it's going to be awesome. Because if you don't convince them of it, then they never get to do it because they think that they don't want to. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with like, this sibling sucks. This baby cries all the time. It's like, no, just imagine this. And it's the same thing you always say, like, you can't tell your kids what to do. They watch you. So it's almost like they watch me get excited about the idea of making a movie or the idea of having a sibling.
Yeah.
Oh my God, imagine.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
And maybe that's like some of the distinction to be made in there is like, you don't ever tell them how to feel. Right. I mean, there is in some ways, it's so maddeningly simple. If you want your kids to be away, be that way.
Right.
Like that's right. It's just,
you should be very excited. You have a baby sister. It's going to be great. Your life is going to be awesome.
Yeah,
right.
No, you just be stoked. And it doesn't mean that you're not like, yeah, it does suck when that baby cries. Right. Or yeah, it sucks when your toddler knocks over your thing. That's so frustrating. But then you're also communicating, holy shit, my brother still, he knows me in ways that nobody else ever will. And we're close in this way that's totally unique. It's just, you're a teacher. You're a teacher. Yeah. In addition to many other things, you are a teacher.
Love it. So I got one it's something I just recently learned from, your favorite Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, but like
we're starting to speak about her in a way that's like, oh no, it's really uncomfortable. Well, Dr. Bryson says that
she told me to drink the Kool-Aid and then we will get to the magical land.
Dude, Dr. Bryson could lead us right off a cliff right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
But the thing about like, you're allowed to be like annoyed with your kids. As long as you're in a regulated state and not like, dude, what the fuck? What are you doing? Ugh. Like, that's not good. But if you're like, dude, come on, man. Not cool. Like, why I asked you not to do that. That's just not cool, man. Like, I don't know if I would have done that before. And I might have used more of a like psycho no feelings,
just mask
sociopath.
it. Yeah.
Just like,
shove it down.
Come on, bud. That's not cool. We don't like that.
Yeah.
And I think that I've got on my partner about that. Like I've got on my wife, like when she expresses frustration, I wouldn't say I'm like militant about it, but I'd be like, hey babe, like don't be so like upset with the kids. Like, well, they're being shitty and they're not listening and whatever. And it's not, she doesn't ever really blow, but if someone's being annoying and plays with their food, hey, can you cut it out? And then they play with their food and like flick a food across the table accidentally. It's like, well, we just asked. They fucking did it again. Dude, what's the deal, man?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And she said that and I was like, oh, wow. Like, because that's normal. Mm-hmm. If you were over my house and and you were flicking peas and I was like, hey, Matt, can you like, dude, cut it out. What are you doing? And you kept doing it. I'd be like, Matt, seriously, what the fuck?
What the fuck?
What are you doing? Stop
being a dick. Yeah.
And that's regulated. That's not like losing it.
Right. You're still totally in command of your decisions there. The other thing that I think is really cool about that recognition is there have been times with my kids where I have struggled to find like, what is the connected consequence to this behavior, right? Like there's times when it's easy. It's like, oh, you knocked over this thing, so you don't get to play with this thing anymore. But when my kids were being just kind of shitty to me, I was like, what's the connected consequence there? Mm-hmm. Well, the connected consequence is you get pissed at them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good. And that is like a relational consequence that will very much mirror what will happen to them when they go out in the world and is teaching. And as long as it's not out of control and as long as you come back and you reestablish the connection, not only is it not bad, it like serves a purpose in their learning.
But what the almighty Tina Payne Bryson said was...
Oh, wise
Lord,
one.
Our mother Lord said that she said that you can't your kids shouldn't be responsible for your emotions. So it's like as long as you're not like losing your lid.
Yeah, I think back to my daughter getting right in my face, which that is like one thing. She'll just come at my face in this aggressive way, and it's hard for me to not like. Mm-hmm. And she did that one time, and I was about to get really pissed, but right before I really got pissed, it was like an immediate off gas. I was just like, I hate that shit. Mm-hmm. And it was so okay. It was an authentic, fairly calm expression of annoyance. Yeah. Use the word shit.
Yeah.
You quibble with that, but it did get her attention and she just backed off and it was fine. Like we were fine 2 seconds later.
I like that. It's like, because otherwise I think we said it on the Book of Canon, the 2 Tina Payne Bryson episodes. The
Old Testament and the New Testament.
Jesus Christ. But
if she ever listens to this episode, it's going to be so humiliating. She's not going to listen to our dumbasses. All right, go ahead.
Oh yeah,
she's far above that.
Okay. Anyway, we're being stupid. Sorry. Bring it in.
Maxie, this episode is brought to you by, there's this podcast out there. It's been growing, steadily growing. It's called Milkless. Mm-hmm. It's these 2 fucking chuckleheads. I'm not sure why anybody listens, but they do. And it's very exciting for us.
That's what you got? That's your ad?
Well, I thought you were going to say something. Like, that was the toss.
You know, Matt, you're good at a lot of things. Our goal here is to let people know we're thankful for you guys listening. Please share this with a friend. It's how we're going to be able to grow. So send it to a friend, and we'd be thankful.
All right.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good.
I was trying to like toss it off to you I thought that was a fucking layup. I feel like since the beginning of doing this podcast, we have struggled with how do you think really hard about all this stuff, but not constantly wig out that you're fucking up. Like, how do you be conscious of all these ideals and best practices, but not always be self-flagellating and be a worried parent? You have used the term like zoom out, which is also something Morgan Cutlip, in our episode with Morgan Cutlip, I remember you bringing that up, like zooming in and zooming out. Mm-hmm. And she talks about that too. you hear so much about like trauma and traumatic events. And I think I extrapolated from that too much of a weighting and an importance on individual moments. Mm-hmm. And the way to like learn about all this stuff, but not freak out, is to educate yourself, have ideals that you aim for. But when the shit hits the fan, zoom out to what is the overall big impression of childhood that my child is having. And is that shitty thing that just happened the norm, or is that a blip? That idea that really what is important is a much broader picture has allowed me to like think about this stuff and really care about getting it right, but not go to such a shamey place in the moments, in the individual moments when I don't.
Totally. I mean, well, I think what's hard is when you learn about stuff, when we learn about parenting techniques, when we lose it on our kids, you're always using examples. Like that's how you learn.
Yeah.
Like you can't just say, oh, you must do X, Y, and Z with a child to unlock their frontal lobe and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, cool. Give me an example. Getting out of the bathtub.
We learn through story. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The problem is, and this is a new analogy, instead of zooming out, zooming in. So that's one way. You zoom into the exact moment, you learn about it, you zoom back out. Or it's that you can think of it like going to the hardware store. We're just getting tools. And by getting tools, we learn about stuff, but we're not getting a playbook. And I think that's what social media and a lot of like parenting people get wrong is like, we're not telling you or each other how to do this. Mm-hmm. And while we do go into story and specific examples where we break something down about one of our children doing something and spend 30, 40 minutes talking about a specific moment, it's hard to then leave that moment and realize, okay, whatever we came up with, whatever we figured out together through the research does not like give us a playbook for the next time. It's a set of tools like, oh, next time, maybe there will be an off-gas situation that maybe I'll remember to get this tool. Mm-hmm. All we're doing is getting more tools, but it's not a playbook. No one has a playbook. There's too many millions of moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll fail otherwise if you're trying to have a plan for every fucking thing.
Yeah. And this goes back to the point you were making earlier about like, it's okay to be angry. If you become so obsessed with saying the right thing in every moment and reacting the right way in every moment, and, oh, this kind of situation calls for this kind of scripted response, you lose the authenticity of yourself. And you lose the relational nature of you as human being to your child as human being, which is part of how your kid's going to learn about how human beings relate to each other.
Totally. 100%. And what if the current guidance is wrong? Like, for example, like this whole growth mindset thing, like don't tell your kid good job. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell my kid good job all the fucking time. And I'm going to whisper it in their fucking ear.
Yeah.
Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm feeling that one could be wrong. And imagine like, so it's just like, if we get too prescriptive with it, then you think you're doing all these things like, oh, I'm going to give them this vitamin. I'm not going to say good job. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then you get like, I've met a parent who's like, yeah, I don't say good job. But they're cold. And it's like, oh, the people who like invented the like growth mindset fucking thing where you're not supposed to say good job are also like, dude, you need to like really be super loving, have this really incredible relationship with your child if you're not going to say good job. Because if you're a shitty parent, you should probably say good job a lot.
Say a lot. Tell him you're proud of him every day. It's better than not telling him anything good. Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a good example where I think just like that obsession of like, what's the exact way to do this could get in the way and short circuit a moment of you with whatever fucking words you use, expressing to your child that you share in their joy of something that they've done that is impressive. Like, right. Don't fuck with that. Like, don't worry so much about the words that you fuck with that.
Something I learned from you in episode, I think 2 or 3 on discipline. You know, you kind of mentioned the thing about connected consequences, and we started talking about that a lot, and it's been a recurring theme through the show. I was very into punitive punishments. Like, you know, for those that don't know, because I honestly did not know what punitive meant. what does it mean? Just like
it kind of means like the point of it is the punishment. Like it has no point other than to
like 10 years in jail is punitive.
Yeah. If there's no like rehabilitation or anything, it's just like you did this bad thing. So this bad thing's going to happen to you.
Right. So I tried to make them relatively nice. And so what I used to do, if you don't remember the episode, is I would put like something that, you know, that they're not really using, like a coloring book that they hadn't used in a week, above the fridge when they would cry. And I felt like I was doing a good job to be there for them and comfort them. The more we've looked into it, like those aren't like ideal. If you're going to hit your kid, then that is way better than hitting your kid. So fucking put the coloring book above the fridge. But if we're trying to become that legendary parent without shame or anything, is like, I've learned to do more just like, look, if you are being shitty at the table, you're going to get removed from the situation. And like, you're going to throw food at the table after one warning. We said not to do it. Cool. Like you like can't really be here. Mm-hmm. And we go downstairs and we'd like sit in a different room or sit in their bedroom and we just kind of hang out. And even if they're freaking out, I was there to console them. I stopped doing the punitive punishments of like, okay, your toy is going to get put above the fridge for a day.
Yeah.
I saw that at the time as like, well, there's a consequence. You got to learn that there's a consequence. Mm-hmm. And I still kind of feel that, not that there's a consequence, there's a punitive punishment waiting for you, but the kids need to know that there is an end of the line. Mm-hmm. That like, well, there are rules. This is not Nam. And like, if we say, hey, can you cut that out? And then they keep doing it. Okay, then something's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But it's better if it's connected. Like, you can't handle this situation, then you're going to be removed from the situation. And we're going to go into a different room together and just kind of like chill. And be like, yeah, it's not, you see why we're down here? Doesn't really work. Yeah.
For me, what made that shit click so much, and I'm a word nerd, mm-hmm. as you frequently make fun of me for being, I'm comfortable with it.
Disciple?
Yeah. That the word discipline has the same etymology as the word disciple. Mm-hmm. That what discipline is about teaching. Mm-hmm. It's funny because it's like you were intentionally choosing really mild, punitive consequences. Like they're not even using this coloring book. I'm going to talk and put it on top of the fridge. But I think through the course of this podcast and like really trying to get in the minds of our kids, when that happens, what your kid is thinking is like, yeah, my dad sometimes just takes things I like and puts them where he can reach them and I can't because I'm short. Mm-hmm. What a dick.
Yeah.
Like, so they don't end up reflecting on what they did. They end up reflecting on like that the punishment just seemed kind of like shitty.
Well, and also just like the fact that then I become the arbiter of whatever, which I think that could still work. I think that that's actually kind of fine, to be honest, that if you do a punitive thing, put it above the fridge. I was still there consoling the child. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's not egregious at all.
If you throw peas after a warning, then that's going to go above the fridge. I'm so sorry, bud. That's what happens. I think that's fine. But I think what's better is when it is connected. And the connected is, you're being shitty here. There's always the thing of like, well, then you can't be here.
Yeah.
And also just like a connected consequence is like, my family doesn't like listening to me talk for long periods of time because I, have the gift of gab. But if we're like having a fun dinner and then someone's like keeps getting up and sometimes like our older boys will just like keep getting up and like, I gotta do this. Oh, I want to show you this. I want to show you this. And it's like, okay, that's cool, man. Yeah. Thanks for showing me that Lego, but like stay in your seat, guys, no more getting up. And then they keep doing it. Guys, last one. And they do it again. Then I'll just be like, all right, guys, family meeting. I'm like, we got it, Dad. We got it. We won't do it again. I'm like, no. Now you will. Now I'm going to talk. Guys, here's the situation. And my wife, it's the hardest for her because she has to feel the punishment too of listening to me talk.
She's like, can I get up? I have.
But literally, like, those are the things where we just talk through the whole thing. Guys, I'll tell the whole story. And it's just annoying as fuck but I'm explaining the whole thing. That is enough of a consequence. Mm-hmm. And it also, they hear about it. It's like, man, that was like a drag listening to Dad for 3 minutes, but also they hear it. So
yeah.
With that said, like, as we always say, just not to astroturf and say that, like, how good of parents we are, because I still will snap at them.
Yeah.
So it happens. It's just,
of course. Yeah, because they can be super fucking annoying.
Yeah.
And they don't listen.
No.
They don't listen.
They don't.
Kids don't listen.
No.
This is more of a marital learning than a parenting learning. This was definitely part of our conversation with Dr. Cutlip, but also just like a conversation we had with friends of ours, like when we had Stolper on, Iceman. This idea that it is not enough for me as a partner to, sometimes it is enough, but it is not always enough for me as a partner to show up and say, I'm here. What do you need? That like really the true step toward being the most helpful partner you can be involves this mental work of you used a phrase that has stuck with me. I love it a lot. Like you got to be following the thread of what's going on so that you can then jump in and not have to be caught up by your spouse, so that you can sometimes see shit coming and either call it out with your spouse or just even better, just fucking take care of it. I'll give an example that happened last night. And it was something like I ended up doing it the way I want to do it, but I realized in doing it that I hadn't been. So our daughters are going to move into the same room at some point. And my wife has kind of been saying like, okay, I really want to start thinking about like how we decorated for our oldest, but also how we kind of get the youngest in there and how we make that feel. And I can admit like, yeah, like over Christmas. Yeah, I can help with that. Yeah, whatever. But I was not, every time she brought it up, my brain had been somewhere else. I was in work. I was in whatever the fuck, but I was not following the thread. Right. And then last night, my daughter had a rough day at school and I hadn't gotten to see her really because I had to work late. And so last night I just lay down in bed with her until she was almost asleep, which I don't usually do anymore with my oldest. But there I was in the room without my phone and I just had some time to think. And I just started looking around the room at all the ways she had decorated it and seeing her room as this magical little cove. And I was like, oh, this is what she sees every night before she goes to sleep. And these are kind of how you can hear the sounds from the kitchen. And this is the lamp. And this is where she's hung her stuff.
Yeah. Ketamine's kicking in. Yeah.
Ketamine's kicking in. Yeah. That's right when it's starting to hit real good. And then I was like, oh, and now we're going to ask her to split this room with a whole nother person. And oh, she needs to be a part of thinking about how that's going to happen, or she's going to be pissed at her sister for something that we're choosing. And suddenly, like, I picked up the thread just because I stopped and thought about it for a while. And then when I came out of the room, I was like, hey, babe, you've been trying to bring this up with me. I was just thinking about all these things. What if we got our daughters a bunk bed for Christmas? And like, what if, like, how do we, and that's the kind of husband that I want to be and will never always be. But some of it is just taking the time and the brain space to just be on the thread.
Totally. And I could do a way better job of that because I've stepped up to be more of a like 50-50 workload partner. I'm approaching. I'm the limit as workload approaches 50-50. The asymptote is close. Yeah. But
you are an asymptote. I've always said that.
Yeah. A lot of people say that. People say I'm an asymptote. But so I could totally do a better job of that because it's got to be lonely as the primary parent to be scheduling everything, and it's nice to have an equal parent that helps out. But the thing that I've done historically is always sort of care about what I care about. Like I care about the child's mental development, their emotions, their math and reading, their skills, their gameplay, their happiness. Like that's what I spend all my energy on, like almost 100% of it. Nothing else matters to me. Like my wife does the child's laundry. Like I help her fold, you know, like my wife knows when, like our kids shower like pretty much every other day, sometimes every third day, sometimes longer. I have no fucking idea when the last time they showered was. It could have been yesterday, could be tomorrow. So I could totally do a better job of stepping up but then again, do you need two people doing that?
No, there has to be some division of labor. 100%. There has to be some division of labor. And there's things that my wife doesn't have to think about that I think about. But There's a good episode of Bluey about this where like, you know, the dad takes him swimming and they're like, mom's boring. Dad's going to take us swimming. But then he just takes him swimming and like he forgot towels and there's no sunshade. And just like he didn't do all the boring logistical shit. Mm-hmm. And the result is that they have a shitty time swimming until their mom shows up having thought about a lot of this stuff. And it's like a recognition that, yeah, you're thinking about like the kids, like development and their emotional health. And like, but that is not like, there's a big piece of that that's just fucking grunt work.
Yeah.
Just to like set the circumstances so that they're going to do well. And I do like, there are things that we have divided, but in the case of like my daughter's bedroom, my wife had brought that up with me a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And it's like, oh no, she's like telling me that she like she actually wants a partner in thinking about this.
Yeah.
And deserves one.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that you always say that continues to be true every time you say it is like, talk to your partner, figure out which one of those are like, yeah, that's yours. I really don't have to think about that. That's mine. You really don't have to think about that. And which ones are the things that it's like, thinking about this one alone is kind of lonely.
And hard. Yeah.
So it'd be nice if we were both following the thread and hard. Yeah. And probably, and this is true of many things, we will get to a better decision if we think about it together because we will moderate each other and both bring things to that conversation.
Love it.
Yeah. So like, don't just show up and say what you need. Like get there ahead of time.
Well, that's level one. You got it. That's level one.
Yeah. That's level one. Yeah.
We're talking about level 2 people here.
That's, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want any chance of meeting the Reverend Master. And
that's where I was going. I was like, Dr. Bryson says that there are 6 levels. And when you get to the... Oh, man.
Oh, God.
Embarrassing. How humiliating. Well, she like we are learning things on here. It's great.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, part of what we're going to use this time off for is to go be with our families and celebrate the holidays. But we are also going to put real work into continuing to book guests for the next season of this that bring expertise and perspectives. We're also going to continue to have some friends on, which will be a blast. That always goes great and is so fun. But we have really been like excited about the caliber of people we've been able to get on.
Yeah, more to come. Thanks for being with us, and check back through the catalog. Listen, there's some good stuff in there. I love episode 7 on lying.
Oh yeah.
I like episode 19, worry, anxiety, and a poetry reading that'll blow your cock off.
Back catalog. Yeah. And hey, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
It means a lot to us. We love doing this.
Appreciate it.
Happy holidays, y'all.
Brought to you by Violet Archer. I like it because they're solving the case.